I've just spent around an hour with the new Meta Quest 3 S, and in today's video I'm going to share what I've learned and experienced and try to answer the two questions that I think truly matter. How much better is it than the Meta Quest 2, and how much worse is it than the Meta Quest 3? Before I get into my thoughts and some specs about the headset, I think it's important to quickly cover why the Quest 3 S even exists. For clarity, the letter S in Quest 3's title might confuse some people into thinking this is a slimmer version of the Quest 3, when in actual fact it's a downgrade and bulkier, and with an enticing price tag of $299, which makes it pretty attractive to consumers, which is of course one of Meta's targets for this headset. But its other sole purpose is for people who own a Quest 2 to finally upgrade to the Quest 3 S, because the Quest 3 launch price seems to be a bit too much for newcomers, or existing Quest 2 owners end up sticking with what they've got, which kind of makes sense for a number of reasons. That is, until it doesn't make sense, and that's where the Quest 3 S comes in. Games like Batman Arkham Shadow, for example, which will be available for free to everyone who buys a new Meta Quest 3 S or a Quest 3 from the 15th of October, is only playable using the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 chip found in the Quest 3 and Quest 3 S. We also have Alien Rogue Incursion, which isn't playable on Quest 2, and I'm pretty certain Metro Awakening and Behemoth and more newer titles will be trying to make use of the more powerful specs because of the launch of the Quest 3 S. Developers are thirsty to move onwards and upwards in terms of what the users experience, and the Quest 2 is now 4 years old, but the majority of sales are still for the Meta Quest 2, and developers don't want to pour cash into a Meta Quest 3 exclusive when the headset entry price is just too much for the masses. So the Meta Quest 3 S is aiming to be the missing part of the chain, and Batman is the game to prove to consumers that better graphical games are coming and worth leaving the Quest 2 behind. So let's go over the positives that Meta Quest 3 S is offering. You get 128 gigs of storage, the latest Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 chip, the excellent touch controllers from Quest 3, which is a massive improvement over Quest 2 touch controllers. The haptics, the weight and how comfortable they are will make you never want to go back. You get full color pass-through and excellent mixed reality, which wasn't possible on Quest 2. And while I'm talking about mixed reality, Quest 3 S doesn't actually have a depth sensor the same as Quest 3. Instead, it uses software. But to be honest, I didn't notice any difference. I actually thought this mixed reality experience was just as good as Quest 3. You also get an upgrade in RAM to 8 gig versus the 6 gig of RAM on Quest 2, and as I stated earlier, a free copy of Batman. Being a standalone device, it's worth mentioning you can expect 2 to 2.5 hours of use per charge. Now the negatives compared to Quest 3, the Quest 3 S is the same resolution as Quest 2. It also has the same field of view of around 100 degrees, which is the same as Quest 2, and 10 degrees smaller than Quest 3. It is bigger than Quest 3, but also 20% slimmer than Quest 2. It has Fresnel lenses, and last things to mention on the headset are the new action button for quick selection between mixed reality and virtual reality, and there is also no headphone jacks, which did come as a surprise, but they pretty much assure me that most people now want to use Bluetooth headphones. So when it comes to actually using the Meta Quest 3 S, it was pretty close in terms to what I expected. It feels like you're wearing a Quest 2. The gaming experience seemed the same as Quest 2, but somehow the screen in the games did look a little bit more impressive than what I expected. Games like Supernatural, which use real 3D geometry mixed in with virtual reality, looked pretty impressive. But when I was actually playing Batman Arkham Shadow again, I definitely missed the high resolution in combination with the pancake lenses. Obviously this is my experience, the Meta Quest 3 is currently my daily driver. In no way am I saying Meta Quest 3 was a bad experience, but for VR, you can definitely see there's a difference between the two headsets. Mixed reality, however, was pretty surprising. The pass-through, although grainy, which may have been because the lighting was so dim on the demo stations, was a lot better than I expected, and it felt like a Quest 3. I checked out some media, I had 6 apps open all at different points within my space, and the hand tracking was great. Now before I answer the original two questions, there are some things to consider, and these are just my opinion. The 128 gig of storage really isn't all that much, and when we talk about games that are going to look better and more complex, the more storage each game is likely to use. And for this, there is the larger 256 gig version for $399. But unless you're someone who is happy uninstalling and reinstalling your games, and always have access to Wi-Fi, for example, I would personally go for the 256. Now what I haven't mentioned is that Meta have now brought the price down of the Meta Quest 3, and there is only going to be one version going forward, and that is the 512 gig model, and it's going to be priced at $499, which means 4 times the storage, the 4K infinite display, and the pancake lenses, which are the real winner, and obviously it has a wider field of view. So now with all that information laid out on the table, Which of these three headsets would I go for? Would I go for the 128 for $299, or would I go for the $399 256 gig model, or would I simply pay that extra $100 and go for the 512 Meta Quest 3? But before I close out the video, I want you to know this isn't a full review. A full review will be coming in October. I think there's only really two choices that make sense. There's the $299 model of the Meta Quest 3S, which is a great entry price for anyone who hasn't got a headset yet or is thinking of upgrading. But if you're going to start spending that sort of money around the $400 mark, I would seriously consider going for the Meta Quest 3 itself. Playing Batman on Meta Quest 3S was good, but playing Batman on Meta Quest 3 is excellent. Thank you ever so much for watching. In this video description you will find some Meta affiliate links for you to make pre-orders to these headsets. If you want to use them, that's great and support the channel. Thank you for any likes and any comments and anyone who subscribes to the channel, and I will see you all on the next one.